I'm not doing anything except eating potato chips and watching game shows. So I really have got to start doing something. So I looked in the paper and there was some audition announcements. Went to auditions because I had, from all my years of doing musical theater, auditions were nothing to me. I auditioned and this gal was putting together just her and another person. She was looking for another person. And she said, let's go to Japan. Let's do something. And I said, okay. So she was a dancer singer. I was a singer dancer. So it was a good, it was a good fit. And we all over Asia. And then after I came home from that was like a year. After I came home from that, I kicked around for a little bit and then went back to Japan for 10 years by way of Korea. I sang top 40 in Korea and Seoul, Korea at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. And it was crazy. It was just a crazy time for someone in their mid 20s to see another culture. The Asia was always something of when you're in high school, people would ask you if you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? And I always said Asia because it's just totally different. I had no idea that I would come to live, work, and be among that society years later. So it was just, it was crazy. It was great.
We had to remember too, this was back before you could look up anything you wanted to look up on the internet and you're going. You're not YouTubing what's it like to live in Tokyo and
exactly. That's exactly right. Way before that.
I've been to Tokyo once and I absolutely loved it. I can't imagine how it would be to live there. I know Daphne, you were stationed.
Did the exercise there. So in South Korea. So I've been to Seoul and a couple other places in Korea, but Seoul is crazy.
I will tell you my greatest memory of Seoul is when at that time when I was there, the citizens of Seoul were up in arms. They were rioting up at the universities. And I would get calls in my hotel room because I wasn't staying at the Hyatt Regency, even though I was working there. I would get calls saying, don't leave your hotel room. We will come and pick you up because there's riots. And I'm thinking, if there's riots, how can I go out even? So they said, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Okay. So it was snowing and it was horrendous. We tried to go up the hill to the Hyatt Regency when it was snowing and the van would just slide on down. Try to go up again. And the cab driver was in hysterics. He was laughing so hard. And I was in the back seat. I was like messing myself up. I needed new panties. I was beside myself. He just thought it was just the grandest thing. So finally got to the club. I took the elevator down because it worked in the basement. There was a huge, at that time, a discotheque in the basement where I sang. And I found myself in an elevator with a bunch of people who were rioting, kids, university students who were rioting. You could tell they all had the headbands and they saw the back of my jacket. Back of my jacket had the name of the group and Hyatt Regency Hotel. And that's the only thing that saved me. They loved the music. They loved pop music. They loved rock and roll. They loved Cyndi Lauper and all the American names, all the westernized names who sing. And that's the only thing that really saved me. It was really interesting. One time I was shopping and they were throwing tear gas up at the university and it wafted down. And I didn't tear up, but I sneezed uncontrollably. Uncontrollable. I couldn't get out before my chew it was just one right after the other. It was crazy. Crazy.
And you never thought of going home?
No, because I was making good money. I was making good money. I will tell you and Daphne, you'll know this, you get the ARMS radio. We got American news there, like ABC News over there through the station, through the ARMS station. And what I saw in Korea on ABC News was a completely different thing than what my mother was seeing in San Francisco. She was seeing all the reports about the riots and everything in Seoul, Korea. But when it was reported in ABC on the station in Korea, I never saw that because the Korean government, it would be an insult to the Korean government to report that. for us to see that. So I never saw that. It was
Well,
very interesting.
Wow.
My visit to Seoul, the first thing that hit me, just because I was in a couple of major cities, is the den people.
Mm-hmm.
That blew me away. And now I grew up in Chicago, so it's not like I'm from rural Illinois. I grew up in Chicago,
Right.
second largest city in the U.S. at that time period. But the people per literally square inch was incredible. That's what struck me first. And the second thing was the food. Oh, and how clean it was to be that dense. Catching
That's an interesting
public
thing that you said that.
transportation, just period,
Yeah.
the streets.
It's
Very
interesting
clean
that
in
you said
Japan.
that. Very clean in Japan, but it's so interesting that you would say clean, because one of the stories that I tell all the time is that at one point when I was there, North Korea rigged up a hot air balloon to go up, and I guess they knew how the wind was blowing, but it blew over South Korea, and it released all these pamphlets, flyers, and everything all over the streets of Seoul, Korea, like the main drag and stuff like that. And basically the flyer said, "Come on over here. It's great. Come on over here." And we were told, as Americans, okay, listen, don't pick it up. You're going to be curious. And if you happen to pick it up, put it in one of the white boxes. There were white boxes that, like little mailboxes, that you could lift up the top and put it in. But we were told that if a Korean was caught picking it up, that they would get, I don't know, apprehended. Something bad would happen. So we were told, look, nothing bad's going to happen to you, but just don't pick it up. But it was amazing. It was an amazing time.
They take North Korea real seriously, because now when I was there, we're talking pre 9/11. So we're talking about pre 9/11. So now we're used to more protection and things in our airports. But even then, they actually had armed soldiers in their airports. So we're talking the late 90s. They were armed, and the weapons were in the zero condition, which means they actually had rounds in the chamber. They have, in many of their tall buildings, they still have gun emplacements. They take threat of invasion real seriously.
Right.
Also, the other thing I noticed about Korea, they grow food everywhere. Like in places, the embankments along the freeways.
Oh, you
We
can
have
smell
grass.
the garlic. Yeah.
They'll have cabbages. They'll have something growing everywhere. The medians on the boulevard.
We can actually smell the garlic when we got off the plane.
And I
Wow.
asked the Papa-san that was on base, around the base concession, and he said it had to do with the Japanese occupation period, because they were occupied quite a bit. It was often between them and China. Either China or the Japanese for a millennia would invade Korea. And Korea is, dare I say, close to being the breadbasket of Asia. And whoever would come in would ship out the food that was grown there to their country. So there's always a thing about, okay, keeping food, making sure there's enough food, things of that nature. Hence kimchi. So, but those are the density of population, cleanliness, and they grow food everywhere.
Yeah. One of the times when you work at night, you get home at 3-4 o'clock in the morning and you crash, and they still have, technically they are still in a state of war, but they just have had the longest treaty in the history of the world. They've had the longest treaty ever, but they still do the drills every single month. I think it's on the second Wednesday of the month or something like that. They still do the drills after all these years. So if you're driving and you hear the alarm sound, the sirens, you have to pull over and lay down in your car. If you are out shopping, you have to kind of huddle to the sides of the store where you're at. I'm sure the kids in school are getting under their desks, are doing what they do. The nightlife people, after so many years of hearing the drills, even the Korean nightlife people, they're like, okay, we'll let it go. I'm sleeping. But it's so funny because I was only in Korea for 9-10 months, but how ingrained you are. And I knew it was not. I heard heard the siren, but in my head, in my sleepy head of dreams, I knew it was not supposed to be that day. And man, I hit under that bed so hard, so fast. It turned out that it was someone who was defecting, flying in. And of course, the South Koreans didn't know that they were defecting. So they sounded the alarms all over the country.
Mm.
And man, it just impressed me how much in my sleepy stupor, that I actually could had the wherewithal to dive under the bed. It was amazing.